The 5 most important skills for a singer to develop, for me, I'll lay them out this way. Number 5 would be pitch. And I put it at the bottom of the list because I feel singers spend a disproportionate amount of time focused on pitch alone, when so many other aspects affect the listener. Those other aspects would be number 4. 4 is volume. Volume means the dynamics of the voice, not just whether you're projecting or not. The rise and fall speaks to a listener as to your emotional state. Another emotional signal would be rhythm. And so rhythm is my 3rd skill for singers to develop. The rhythm not only of consonants and where they fall within the beat, but also durations of notes and whether they feel intentional or not. And number 2 would be timbre, which is the tone of the voice. Often, you know, in speech, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I don't know about you, but my mother used to always say to me, don't give me that tone of voice, and that meant my attitude needed adjusting. And so timbre is this catch-all term that not only means the tone, but also how the note sustains, whether or not it decays or stays loud or stays the same volume. Also the beginning of a note, the onset, the release of a note, let's call it the offset, and whether you end with vibrato or start with vibrato. And then the first, most important, critical aspect, I'll say, because it's really not a skill, but the most important aspect to develop with your singing is trust. Trust is what the listener waits for. They wait for you to trust your choices, your skill set, your reflexes, your intention. Because if you don't trust your singing, why should they? The number 1 most common mistake singers make is fearing mistakes. Audiences don't require us to be flawless, but they certainly appreciate it when we're fearless. And a fearless performance comes from trusting your choices and your skill set. And that brings me to number 2. A common delay of our development is spending too much time singing songs and not enough time vocalizing exercises. Vocalizing exercises creates an objective realm where you're asking for just 4 targets. What pitches, what tone or timbre, what rhythm, and what volume are you going to sing at? That develops coordination very quickly because it's objective, black or white, yes or no. Singing, on the other hand, is always going to be subjective. It's your taste, it's your style, it's your personality. So someone may love the way you sing a song, and someone else might not be feeling it. And that's going to stay that way for the rest of your artistic life. And then the 3rd common delay of development is telling your body what to do when singing versus asking for the sound. When you vocalize or sing an exercise, you're asking for those specific attributes of sound. And when singing a song, you're asking for a sentiment to emerge. That will instruct your reflexes better than anything if you trust it. What does it mean to support your singing tone or voice? It means to make a sound you like. What does it mean if someone else instructs you to support your singing tone more or less? It means to make a sound they like. That's all it ever is, sound. Yes, there's lots of physiology and physics behind the different sounds we make, but the sounds are always changing, so the behavior is ever changing. And there's no physical representation, no tactile representation in our brains for the diaphragm or the vocal folds. So the 2 major players in that discussion of whether something is supported correctly or not can't be felt. So to focus on the mechanics of singing is a very ambiguous command. Instead, the outcome is really our goal. So we should use adjectives. We should think in adjectives. Richer, fuller, brighter, darker. This gives the brain a lot of wiggle room in terms of dialing up specific behaviors to feed each particular sound you ask for. The first thing I wish I'd known when I first started out singing is that where you begin is no indication as to how far you can go with your voice. I definitely was not one of those blessed, gifted singers, and I have attained a lot of skill over the years, and I was so disenchanted in the beginning, it delayed my development. Which brings me to the second thing I wish I'd known, and that is the value of deliberate practice. I didn't vocalize enough when I first started out because I was so frustrated and disenchanted with the sounds I was hearing. And so I didn't devote a whole lot of time to vocalizing. I was just singing songs, hoping things would get better. The value of practice can't be overstated. And the third thing, and the most important thing, is that we really don't learn to sing. We unlearn the habits that are blocking our singing. Singing is innate, it's baked into our DNA. And so what prevents us is basically the culture we were born into, or the inhibition that rises up in us as we go through our lives, blocks off or inhibits, makes us doubt the very reflexes that need to flow for singing. No one's born holding a guitar or playing the piano, but we are all born connected to our voices, so that which disconnects us has to be something to be unlearned. And so if you view it as something that you're unpacking, you're stripping away layers of inhibition, it's a far easier process than trying to cram in this secret knowledge of how to sing better. One of my favorite exercises is very simple musically, but it's equally valuable for pros and amateurs alike. Sustaining a very low volume hum at a kind of a high note, as high as you can produce without straining. Maintaining a pure tone at a very steady frequency, at a very steady volume, does two things. There's a therapeutic value to it. What research has shown is that that delicate vibration attracts hyaluronic acid to the edge of the fold. That's the hydrating agent of the vocal folds. So it's a very good thing to bring more of it to the edge. So that's the therapeutic value. If your voice is shot for whatever reason, that's a good rejuvenator. And then for amateurs, it's a great skill builder. It's easy to play a trumpet loud. I shouldn't say it's easy. Once you can trigger the instrument, you'll make a loud sound. So, creating a loud sound with the voice is fairly easy. Sustaining a controlled low vibration sound takes a lot more skill. The relationship between breath management and vocal folds is coordinated greatly with a low volume, consistent hum. My first tip for a successful performance is to scout out the venue way ahead of time. I mean days or weeks ahead of time. If you don't perform a lot, there's enough anxiety associated with the performance that you don't want the newness of the venue, the smell of it, the sound of it, the ability to get in and out. Where's the door? Where are you going to be? Where's your dressing room? Is there a dressing room? Those are questions that shouldn't be bombarding you just before your performance. And so you can reduce all of that by scouting out where you're about to sing way ahead of time. The second one is to gear your routine to the hour you will be performing. If you have an 8 p.m. performance coming up, you'll want to schedule your sleep, your eating habits, even when you take a nap, what clothes you're wearing. You want to be at peak level of performance when that showtime occurs. And that's going to take you a good week to 10 days to set up prior. Especially true for morning performances. If you have an 8 a.m. solo you're going to sing at church, you want to start gearing your body so you're getting up at 5, maybe even 4:30. So you get showered, you get hydrated, you eat something, you digest. So you're at peak performance at 8 a.m. And the third thing is to over-animate your practice. I know everyone knows practice is important, but I feel we don't practice the performance enough. And so use your hands, animate, pretend like you're signing the song to someone who's deaf. And all of that's going to go away when you perform. You're not going to be gyrating all over the place. Everything will be reduced, so blow it up when you practice. Make yourself bigger than life so you reduce down to life size when you perform.
Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah.
I am so envious of developing singers these days because the amount of resources available are just about limitless. The internet wasn't even a dream 45 years ago when I was coming of age. And so there's just a glut of video tutorials and blogs about singing. And I know this makes it difficult to find out which one is legit and which one isn't, but I wouldn't worry about that. It's easy enough to sample a lot of different perspectives and see what works for you. Incidentally, if you're doing a sort of a self-help method of developing your voice, I highly recommend you do develop some habits of giving yourself feedback loops. And probably the easiest way to do that is with your phone. Record yourself often when you're vocalizing and singing and ask yourself if you're hearing what you intended to do. I have old devices. It's a metronome. I have a sound pressure level meter. It's a volume meter. It's also a good idea to get a different perspective on your voice through a visual, through your eyes. So, a lot of programs have it where you can see your pitch and see your volume. And that just means that a different aspect of your brain is monitoring your singing. And then if you're old school like me and you like books, this is one I grew up with for 40 years ago. Mary Beth Bunch, Dynamics of the Singing Voice. I liked it back then because it was fairly unmusically biased and it had very good diagrams of the anatomy. For the psyche of the singer, I love this book, The Music Lesson by Victor Wooten. I think it's so important that we immerse ourselves in music as literally a spiritual journey when we sing. And I agree with a lot of what Victor writes about in the book. And then I would be remiss if I didn't give myself a shameless plug here. The Rock and Roll Singer Survival Manual is not about rock singing. It's about it's about singing in general, I should say. And I will say that 40 years ago I learned a lot about singing, drawing from classical lessons and drawing from classical books. So it wouldn't hurt some legit singers to read up on some rock.
Can't you see the possibility?